program.
What you talking about?
The program. The program. Get with the program.
Everybody clap to this. Say what?
Get with the program.
It starts now.
Hello and welcome to Get With The Program Radio Show. I'm your host, Gary Jones. Get With The Program Radio Show is a multicultural, informative, relevant, and entertaining one-hour weekly show offering you a combination of diverse interviews with questions and comments. And as always, we will act as a positive source of information. Now listen, if you want to be a guest on the show, all you have to do is log into www.getwiththeprogram.biz. Shoot me an email, leave me a message. You never know. You may have a conversation that we would love to talk about. Or give me a call at 919-255-2757. Again, the number is 919-255-2757. Now listen, today we're going to be joined in the studio with Steve Rao, my commentary guest today. As always, here Steve is going to be with us today. And also we're going to be joined with Gerard Falzon. He is running for House District number 40 in Wake County, North Carolina. He's a Republican who feels strongly that the rights of average citizens are being ignored and undermined by politicians. So it's going to be a good show now. Now listen, today we're going to talk a lot about public and personal safety, education, economy, and health insurance. A lot of things that is going on, and Gerard is right up in the pocket of this stuff, y'all. So he's going to tell us from his views, and Steve Rao is going to join in on the commentary. So welcome, gentlemen, to Get With The Program Radio Show.
Great to be here, Gary, as always.
Hello, Steve.
Hello, neighbor.
Welcome.
He is my neighbor.
Yeah, we're literally for 20 years.
20
Oh, wow.
20 years.
Yep.
20 years neighbors.
Yep. He was there when my daughter was just 1 year old. And,
Yep.
she was in college, and little Ryan, who wasn't born yet, 15.
Right.
So
You're you had hair.
I had hair. I had hair, and I had life before politics.
Somebody knows you when you had. Somebody actually knows you when you had hair. Ain't that something? Wow.
And my mom always says I was always her child. I used to make my parents laugh more than the other kids. And she said, she always told the grandkids, he was fun. He used to smile and laugh, and they're like, "What? Our dad?" Yeah, but
wow.
I'm happy today.
Good stuff. Good stuff. I know it's going to happen to all of us one day. So let's get right into this thing right here, because we know we got a short period of time. First of all, I want to say welcome again. And Gerard, I know you're running for a position here, but one of your primary focuses, I went to your website and saw some of the primary focuses that you were steering at. Public safety. Let's jump right into public safety, because that's one of the big issues that are going on right now. And I did see that one of the main issues I get a lot of conversation about is defunding the police. That is a big thing. And what I want you to do, if you don't mind, can you tell my listeners exactly what that means when we hear the word defunding the police? Because I hear a lot of different things, but what is that in your vision?
So defunding the police is actually a fairly obvious term. It means cutting police budgets. It means reorienting or reprioritizing the remaining diminished budgets toward away from critical needs. Actually, when you defund, all priorities get re-scrambled, and there really is very little room in any police budget for defunding it. It's just simply not a smart thing to do as crime goes up. Actually, a lot of people really think of defunding the police as a threat to personal safety, but it's also a threat to property. And there is a convergence of life and property. And so when property is threatened, then it's not so simple for a business owner to rebuild, even if they do get fully funded from their insurance companies. But as everybody knows, nobody has zero deductibles from their insurance companies, and payments from an insurance company frequently take a long time. And if there's enough damage in a particular area, it's possible that an insurance company may not have the cash on hand to reimburse the losses. And when that happens, then property taxes need to go up in order to repair the damage to the public infrastructure, and the loan to value goes up because value of the property goes down, and the asset depreciates in value. It's more difficult to sell. Nobody wants to move into an area, and interest rates go up in order to fund the police forces.
Mm-hmm. Steve, what do you have to say about that, defunding the police?
And first of all, I want to thank Gerard Falzon, not only for being a great friend and neighbor to my family, but also his service to our country in the military. And I always make it a point. My late father-in-law, whom you knew very well, was a colonel in the U.S. Air Force. My mother-in-law is still alive, retired U.S. Air Force colonel. So Gerard, we thank you for your service to our country. And Gerard's a Republican, I'm a Democrat, but I think we're perfect examples of the kind of political discourse we ought to be having in this country. And so on this issue, I would say that I agree with Gerard. I do not believe that defunding the police will do anything to keep us safe. I think we need to address the issues of racial bias that are taking place in our police department, but at the same time, not saying that every police officer is capable of this. But there's obviously a problem, whether it's training, how we're communicating in public. If I walked out of this office right now and a police officer said something to me and I grabbed something in my pocket and it was a water gun, or a toy, that officer might think I'm pulling out to shoot him. So he's trained to shoot, right? And I think that's what I'm noticing is that some of these things are happening. Why would you want to shoot someone 5 times in the back? I don't know. But I hope that answers your question. So I believe that defunding the police at this kind of a time is the last thing we do. Being a city councilman in Morrisville, I can tell you right now, and Gerard's a taxpaying citizen in Morrisville, him and his wife, Morrisville, we're seeing more break-ins now in some of the neighborhoods. We're seeing people, we had a homicide, someone in a neighborhood in Morrisville, they attacked an Indian man, broke his collarbone, and stole his car. So why would I want to defund police? I want more police officers out there patrolling and making sure everything's okay.
Yeah, and two additional points I'd like to make to take off on, to build on what Steve was saying is, number one, when you defund the police, you will always hurt the lower income neighborhoods because the police is a public good as well as opposed to a private good. So the higher income neighborhoods are always going to be well protected either by private security or by police forces where they will consolidate in the higher income neighborhoods. Secondly, yes, we're always going to have felony crimes, but like Steve was saying, when someone is attacked, then the response is either going to be slower or non-existent, which makes the threat of crime grow.
Mm-hmm. So if we have a couple of minutes left here in this segment, if not defunding the police, what would be a suggestion to handle the police when these type of situations are happening?
Well, we can always do more with transparency. The body cams are extremely important. As we've seen from this past summer, the body cameras were essential. We can always do more in terms of training, and we can always do more right now in terms of weapons technology or non-lethal weapons technology. I think that would go a long way. So transparency and non-lethal weapons training and technologies, martial arts training and non-lethal weapons.
And in reference to public safety as well, you had mentioned on your website, I saw that DAs are charging too lightly or not at all. So that's going to be another conversation that we're going to talk about. We're going to take a break in just a second here. But Steve, I want you to comment, defunding, Steve, what would be your alternative vessel for if we didn't defund the police?
I think we've already mentioned it. I mean, I like this idea of martial arts training. We in Morrisville are going through very intensive, what they call bias training. I think some people don't realize the kind of training and stimulation that these police officers are going through. So they have a whole interview process about whether there is racial bias. And if there is racial bias, how do you get rid of that bias? Through training and screening. And then community policing, which our chief of police, Patrice Andrews, is doing. Coffee with the cop, cocoa with the cop. We have 45% of our population is Indian American, and immigrants from India. And she's gone to Diwali festivals, Bollywood festivals, done dance festivals to make that community feel comfortable.
Okay, excellent.
And I'll just add something to that too, is in terms of recruitment of minorities. And and promoting that. I mean, it's just a great thing that we've got a police chief, well, actually two police chiefs in a row who were African Americans, and they both did thus far, Chief Andrews doing a great job, and before her, Steve, help me out. Ira Jones. Yeah, did a fine job too. So, yeah, the recruitment, the police force has to reflect the community.
All right, great points, gentlemen. What we're going to do, we're going to take a break. We're going to take a break, and we're going to come back. We're going to talk more about the DA's role, of course. And you mentioned that DAs are charging too lightly or not at all. Listen, you're listening to Get With The Program radio show. I'm your host, Gary Jones, and today we're joined here with Gerard Falzon. He is running for House District 40 in Wake County, and he's a Republican right here in North Carolina. Gerard feels strongly that the rights of every citizens are being ignored and undermined by politicians. And we also here today with a commentary guest, Steve Rao. But listen, don't touch that dial. We'll be right back after this. Hello and welcome back to Get With The Program radio show. Again, I'm your host, Gary Jones. Now listen, today we're joined on the phone actually with Gerard Falzon. He is running for House District number 40 in Wake County, North Carolina. He's a Republican who feels strongly that the rights of average citizens are being ignored and undermined by politicians. Hello, Gerard, and welcome back. You and Steve both.
Hi, Gary. Hi, Steve.
Okay.
Pleasure.
Now, before we took the break, I did mention, Gerard, on your website, you mentioned that we know the DA has a very, very powerful role in that they play. Some of the DAs have more power than some of the politicians, you know, in certain cities and states. And a DA role is very, very powerful. But you mentioned that DAs that are charging too lightly or not at all. So what do we mean? You mean they're not charging enough or just not actually getting what they need to get out of whatever particular crime has been committed? What are you saying on that?
Well, I'm sorry. Did you want me to explain what that meant or my position? I'm sorry.
Well, let's do both of them. Let's explain what that meant, okay, and then we go with your position.
Yeah. So, you know, we've given a lot of time as well as attention to the issue of police funding, but really it's irrelevant if you fully fund a police force. The police are actually doing their job, arresting accused felons, but then they're put in a holding cell. They're given a hot bed, a hot meal, and a hot shower, only to be let out the following morning with maybe just a citation that's paid for by someone else. And so they're back out on the street the following night, and the police officers are recognizing the same faces the following night. And this is especially especially happening out in San Francisco. It's happening out in Minneapolis. It's happening in Portland. It's happening in Seattle. And so we at the state level need to legislate in order to ensure that when felons are captured by the police, that they need to be charged and they need to be tried by district attorneys. And we recognize that they have quite a lot of latitude, but we need to trim some of that latitude, narrow some of that latitude back, because the public deserves law and order. It deserves to be protected from an accused felon for a brief period of time until they're adequately and fairly adjudicated.
Steve Rao?
Yeah, I don't know as much about this issue, but I mean, I think that, you know, I think that we just need to make sure that we are transitioning people back into society and making the investments in these communities so that crime isn't committed. You know, I think that we do want law and order in America, and I think that there's nothing wrong with peaceful protests, but I think when people are rioting and looting and doing these kinds of things, I think it just creates a sense of, you know, I'm a businessman and I have something. I got a call from Raleigh and they said all the business was damaged and they were just doing their job, right? So I just think that there's just a lot of, you know, rhetoric on social media and Twitter and outside groups coming in, and I just hope that we can get to a place where we, you know, can have a better conversation about.
This question next for Gerard. Gerard, in reference to the justice system and of course the DAs as well, do you think that the justice system is fair now, or would you say there's corrupt issues in the justice system?
Well, it's certainly fair. That's what makes America great, in that we are constantly making improvements. But is it fair enough? Well, it's not fair enough. We need to make greater improvements in the fairness. Yes, there is horrible things that have happened in the past, and we have not worked out all of our injustices yet. But we need to continue to work on it going forward, and especially in the state of North Carolina, we can always do better. We're one of the best states in terms of our judicial system, but yet we can do better.
Now, in reference to racism, we know that it exists in some forms on both sides. There has been existing for several years. From your views, and as a Republican from your side, do you think that racism still strongly exists in the justice system? And if so, how do we fix it?
Well, racism goes back thousands of years, actually. It's a consequence of our sinfulness to not be able to see God in our neighbor, especially when that neighbor is of a different color. That's the most outward difference in their appearance sometimes. So that's where racism originates from. And then, honestly, it will always be there because we are sinful people. Do you
still think that racism in the justice system exists? Because we were talking about the DAs. So does that exist in the justice system as well?
Yes, like I mentioned, the justice system is a reflection of ourselves and our innermost passions and as well as our rations. And so the justice system is not perfect, but we can always strive for excellence. We can always do better.
Okay, excellent conversation. So what we're going to do, gentlemen, we're going to take another break here. When we come back, I want to touch more on education, because that is another very important part right now, particularly with the COVID going on. Once again, thank you so much. We're joined today with Gerard Falzon. He is running for House District number 40 in Wake County, North Carolina. Gerard is a Republican who feels strongly that the rights of average citizens are being ignored and undermined by politicians. Listen, you listen to Get With The Program radio show. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back after this. Hello and welcome back to Get With The Program radio show. Again, I'm your host, Gary Jones. Get With The Program radio show is a multicultural, informative, relevant, entertaining 1-hour weekly show. And today we're joined with Gerard Falzon. He's running for House District number 40. He's a Republican in Wake County, North Carolina. Gerard feels strongly that the rights of average citizens are being ignored and undermined by politicians. Welcome back, Gerard and Steve. Good to be back again on the third part here. Now, Gerard, I do want to ask you, we're going to get into more of the conversation, but let's talk a little bit about the debate the other night between Donald Trump and Joe Biden. What do you guys think about the debate? Gerard, what do you think? Who do you think actually did the best in that debate?
Well, I think that the president was able to elicit a few opinions from the vice president, as well as uncover the fact that the vice president is unwilling to take a leadership stance, particularly in the area of the packing the courts and the filibuster. He also refused to take a position or to condemn the left-wing violence that's occurring in various cities around the country. But I think that he was also able to elicit some positions out of the vice president. Number one, that the vice president would accept the results of an election 7 or 8 days max after November the 3rd. So that I thought was a good point that the president was able to accomplish. Number two, he was able to really drive a wedge, I think, between himself and Bernie Sanders and himself and Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. So I'm very interested in hearing over the next couple of days the reaction from Bernie Sanders as well as Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Steve Rao?
Well, and this is where politics is fun. I mean, first of all, I think that it wasn't such a good night for the president. I mean, I think that he got away from doing. He did make a couple of good points about the things his administration achieved, but then I think it got a little too personal. That hot on the collar, calling the vice president stupid. I think that's not a good thing when kids are watching. We're telling them not to bully. I think that was good. He didn't condone. He didn't really say he favored white supremacy, but didn't really answer the question. I think that where I think the president, I think it was a bad night for him. And I'm trying to put on my commentator hat more than my political hat.
Mm-hmm.
I do support Vice President Biden. I just think that he got the experience to be the president. But, I think that Trump was trying to, instead of making it about Trump and his achievements, I think he was making it more about Biden and I think it was a bit of a risk. And, but I think at the end of the day, it's neutralized because they were both, interrupting. It was hard to really hear their points. So I hope the next two debates, they give each candidate the chance to say their piece to the American people and let the people decide. So Trump can talk about some of the things that he's achieved and what he wants for the next 4 years. And then Vice President Biden can talk a little bit about what he wants to achieve. And I think that's what we're going to find out is this election, we're going to talk about swing state in a minute, but I think, do the American people believe that the pandemic has been handled effectively? Do we believe that the economy is stronger today? That's where I have a hard time as a voter understanding what the president's saying when unemployment's the highest it's ever been since the Great Recession, the Great Depression. Manufacturing jobs haven't come back to America. I believe we have a foreign policy that's sort of broken right now in terms of our credibility around the world. I understand he came in wanting to come in there doing some different things. Mm-hmm. I think Vice President Biden's challenge has been, how does he answer the president that you've been there for 50 years and where were you on some of these issues? Mm-hmm. That's something I think the vice president didn't really have a time to answer. Didn't really talk a lot about his record in the Senate. I think that could hurt Joe Biden. Mm-hmm. So to answer your question, I think it really wasn't a win for Biden. I think the president didn't have as great of a night as he could have, but I think they're going to have another debate, and the commission has agreed to new rules.
Okay, my next question is in reference to them choosing the next justice for Supreme Court. Do you think that is actually a good time to go ahead and select that person, or should they actually wait until this president is elected? Gerard, what do you think about that, the selection process and the timing of it?
Well, the timing was brought on by the untimely death. I guess all deaths are untimely. There's never a good time for an associate justice of the Supreme Court to pass away. That's point number one. Point number two, the president is president for all 4 years. He has the right and the obligation to fill the vacancies on the Supreme Court. He's the only one that can do that, so he has to nominate. All presidents do that. I think the real debate is should the Senate take up the vote? Per the Constitution, the Senate has the advise and consent role, and so they are fulfilling their constitutional duty by holding the hearings. And yes, I do believe that it's critical to fill that seat before the election, because this election is probably going to be decided by the courts. I would feel about 90% certain, and I feel maybe 50% certain that it's going to be decided by the Supreme Court. And so, therefore, it's absolutely necessary to have a nine justice bench in order to be able to break ties.
Mm-hmm. Steve Rao?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I do believe the Supreme Court should always be 9 justices. I think that I don't think it should be more than that. I think the court's always worked well with 9 justices, and I'm so sorry for the passing of late Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She was such a freedom fighter and really did a lot of great things for ending gender discrimination, extending 14th Amendment protections for all Americans. And I respectfully disagree. I mean, I think that in this case, we're in the middle of an election. I think the best thing to do is to do exactly what Republicans said Senator Tom Cotton, when they submitted Merrick Garland, let's just wait until the election, and then whoever the president is. So if President Trump wins, then he can go through the process, make the nomination of a conservative justice, And if Joe Biden were to win as the 46th president of the United States, either one of them, maybe 46, have him submit his nomination. But I think clearly the president, I guess if you're playing zero-sum game politics and, at the end of the day, you got to win, you got to score touchdowns. So part of what he's saying is true, that he did win the presidency for 4 years. And so if he's in there, he's just basically doing what he says the Democrats would do, which is to nominate a justice. But, the Affordable Care Act is an issue that the president is litigating in the Supreme Court right now. The election, a lot of uncertainty about accepting the results of the election, whether that's going to be delayed because of absentee ballots, going to the courts, going to the Congress. So I think that there's just so much instability right now. I would prefer just waiting until the election is over. But obviously, it's par for the course. I mean, he's nominated Judge Barrett, and they plan to vote on this in December. And I think we're going to have a new Supreme Court justice. Mm-hmm. So I think the election will be interesting of what this does in terms of turnout. Is the Republican base going to come out more? Is the Democratic base going to come out more? What are the American people, the independents?
Right. And what's so interesting was the debate was very, very powerful. It was, to me, honestly, gentlemen, it was exciting. It was, for the first round. This was the first round. So I'm wondering what the second round is going to be like, because, the first round, everybody came out swinging. So I think everybody's looking forward to the second round. Now, in reference to the VP of choice, now that's going to be the next go round. What is your take on the VP? Do you think Pence and Kamala is going to have a good debate? What do you think?
Well, I mean, I'll take it. Go ahead, Gerard.
No, you take it, Steve.
No, I mean, I think Kamala Harris, it's historic, right? I mean, the first Indian American and Black woman to hold the second highest office in the land on a major presidential ticket to run that office. I think that is inspiring for any kid out there in America to know that regardless of where they come from, what the color of skin is, they can run for president. She's a great debater. She was a prosecutor. She was Attorney General. She's a United States Senator. I think that she will do a good job debating. I think the biggest challenge for her is going to be debating a relatively progressive record in the U.S. Senate, where she's been a little bit more liberal than Vice President Biden. And so that's going to appease to the Bernie Sanders and the AOC base. But what will that do to the independent voters, the Democrats that voted for Trump last time, suburban women voters? I think those votes are at play. So I think it'll be very interesting. She's a great speaker, very charismatic. I met her last year in Washington briefly. I wanted to meet her on Monday, just had too much to do. But I mean, I think Vice President Pence is articulate, calm. He'll make a good case about the efforts they've made to handle the pandemic, leading the coronavirus task force. So it should be an interesting night. He's not as emotional as the president. He's more of a stoic kind of, he'll just talk the facts and he'll hold his own.
Mm-hmm. Okay, great. What we're going to do, I want to hear Gerard's answer. We're going to take a break. When we come back, I want to hear Gerard's answer saying about what it's going to look like when we have Pence and Kamala Harris in their debate. But listen, don't touch that dial. We're going to be right back after this. Hello and welcome back to Get With The Program radio show. Again, I'm your host, Gary Jones. Now, as I said before, today we are joined in conversation with Gerard Falzon. He is running for House District 40 in Wake County, North Carolina. Gerard is a Republican who feels strongly that the rights of average citizens are being ignored and undermined by politicians. And I definitely feel a little bit about that way with Gerard as well, Steve Rob, because politicians, this is interesting, man. Politics is really a challenging thing. So you really have to be on top of that and keep up with what's going on, because things happen at night when you are asleep. So we got to be on top of that. Okay, welcome back, you two gentlemen. Now, before we took the break, Gerard, I did ask you about the VP selection. What is your take with Kamala Harris up against Vice President Pence? What do you think about that, Gerard?
Honestly, I think it's going to be a tougher debate for the vice president going up against a female, going up against an African American / Asian American. So I'm thinking that the vice president has got his hands full. That's going to be a more he's going to have to be really dancing on the head of a pin. He's going to have to be, like a running back, being able to zigzag between all sorts of defensemen coming at him?
Yeah, I mean, I think it'll be a tough debate for the vice president running against that particular woman, a prosecutor, attorney general, former attorney general of California, sitting United States senator. It'll be interesting. You know, she's going to be involved in the Judiciary Committee confirmation, so that'll be an interesting question. And you know, I think that it'll be, you know, I think he'll make a case about foreign policy experience, the kinds of things they've done, you know, in terms of the promises they made in the first election. And I think hopefully the economy will come up. Of course, I think you'll see differences on healthcare, the Affordable Care Act, pre-existing conditions, Medicaid expansion, which we're having that conversation in North Carolina, and the handling of the pandemic. So I think these are the four issues I think that you'll hear. I think if I were the vice president as a strategist, I would talk about foreign policy experience, because Senator Harris doesn't have a lot of that. And you are a heartbeat away from the presidency with a president that's going to be closing in on 80. So in this case, I think both vice presidents have to be prepared to say that if something were to happen to the president, when they place their hand and take the oath of office, will they be able to be the commander-in-chief of the United States of America? And that's a pretty serious question, especially in this time. But that'll be an important part of the debate for the American people.
Absolutely right. Now, I know we have maybe a couple of more minutes here. I do want to ask Gerard. Gerard, you're running for House District 40 in Wake County, North Carolina, as a Republican, and you said you feel strongly that the rights of average citizens are being ignored and undermined by politicians. When you say that, explain to me exactly what do you mean by that, and also, more importantly, tell us what you want to change and what you want to do should you be put in that position.
Sure. You know, let's come back to that area of public safety. You know, I feel that Democrats and Republicans agree about the right to armed self-defense for politicians. They strongly believe that in armed self-defense for themselves, but not for us. The Second Amendment for us means the right to go duck hunting and nothing more. But as an example, I gave a talk down in the town of Holly Springs about the Second Amendment, because they were looking to put up gun-free zone signs all over their town. Well, those gun-free zone signs apply to you and me, but they don't apply to politicians, because there was an armed officer there in the meeting, just like there are in all the town council meetings in the town of Morrisville. It's a general threat. They're not specific threats. If you and I had a gathering at your home or my home, Gary, and we just said, you know, feel that there might be a general threat, do you think that the town of Morrisville, I'm not sure exactly where you live, but I don't think that the police department would send an officer over to you and my house just for a general threat. They're only coming for a specific threat. If you look at education, which I guess we're going to talk about right now, you know, Democrats believe in school choice. They exercise it. Look at the Obamas, look at the Clintons, look at John Kerry, who went to a wonderful private school in France. So they believe in school choice for themselves, but not for you and I. And, you know, let's just look at gun-free zones again. If the town of Holly Springs put up a gun-free zone sign outside of their football stadium, that would be a felony, a gross misdemeanor offense if you and I were to bring a weapon to a football game at the town of Holly Springs. However, do you think that if the governor, either Republican or Democrat, were to come and watch the football game at the town of Holly Springs, let's say a state championship, do you think that his security detail would disarm? Absolutely not, because they believe in the right to life for themselves and their families, but not for you and I.
So I think the issue is, I think the Second Amendment was instituted in the United States at a time when we had to worry about insurrection and whether the government of the United States could survive. I don't think it was used to extend gun ownership to someone with mental illness or sickness who's just going to go gun and kill someone. But I think at that same time, you can't just, you know, say take every gun away from every gun owner in America. So I think we Republicans and Democrats have to come together to figure out how to have a reasonable, common sense gun reform legislation. And I think we have to attack mental illness, more stringent background checks, making sure that we have tighter security measures in schools. I think these are the issues that we need to work on together, both as Republicans and Democrats, because this is not a partisan issue. We don't want our grandchildren or somebody coming in and shooting someone in a movie theater or a restaurant, because regardless, we all bleed red. We're all Americans. I don't think anybody wants it.
Okay, wonderful answer. Okay, now, gentlemen, we have 2 minutes left in this conversation. I do want to ask Gerard real quickly, maybe 1 minute on that. Gerard, in reference to education, what do you see wrong and what do you see that needs to be changed?
Well, to be quite blunt about it, the school district model, if there is an example of systemic racism, that's it. Okay? The school districting model really hurts minority communities, and particularly the minority that's hurt the most by it is the African American community. So in terms of education, I have a couple of different proposals. The North Carolina Opportunity Scholarship is a fantastic way to allow working class parents to exercise school choice to a large extent, not to a 100% extent, but to a large extent, it gives them school choice. Number two, it's fiscally responsible because it returns back money back to the public school system when a child is taken out of the public school system. And number three, it's extremely popular. There's a long waiting list of parents that that applied but didn't apply early enough and still would like to have that $4,200 scholarship to either send their child to private school or to homeschool. Secondly, what I would like to do is to, like Steve said, a very, very key point is to secure our public schools. Number three, we have, like I mentioned before, the Opportunity Scholarship allows for about between $4,500 and $5,000 per student to return back to the public school system that they would not otherwise have. And so that money can be directed toward high-performing public school teachers. And finally, I would like to have full tuition scholarships for matriculation into private schools that agree to start up a satellite campus in the poorest neighborhoods, and for a certain amount of time, and that would allow minority parents to walk their children to an excellent school right in their own neighborhoods, and that would appreciate the property values in that neighborhood, which would decrease the rentals and increase the home ownerships, and that would also attract young urban professionals of all races to buy homes there where they can educate their children for free for a few years in an excellent private school and take advantage of excellent real estate bargains.
Gerard, thank you so much. Once again, I got to let him know we was talking today with Gerard Falzon. He's running for House District 40 in Wake County, North Carolina. He's a Republican who feels strongly that the rights of average citizens are being ignored and undermined by politicians. Gerard, thank you so much, man. Good conversation there. We got to bring you back.
All right. I would love to.
Steve Ralph and Gerard Falzon, thank you both for joining me today. I really appreciate that. Listen, we had a wonderful conversation. We talked about a lot of good things, but we're going to bring Gerard back as we get closer to the election. I got to hear what his comments are going to be saying as we get to maybe the next debate between Trump and Biden. This is going to be good. Gentlemen, thank you so much. That's going to conclude it for today. As I always say, you listen to Get With The Program radio show. I'm your host, Gary Jones. As I always say, stay positive, keep your head up, and remember to
Get with the program.
What you talking about?
The program. The program. Get with the program.
Everybody clap to this. Say what?
Get with the program.
It starts now.